Welcome friends, welcome back to the kitchen. A couple of weeks ago I did a steak and kidney pie, and in that video I had to make rough puff pastry to put on top of the pie. And the rough puff pastry worked out really well. It is a type of pastry that I have always sort of shied away from making. It always just seemed, why would I do that when I could just go out and buy a sheet of pre-made puff pastry? There is one brand here that I can still get in the Toronto area that is made wholly with butter. So it's got good flavor. It works out really well. And if I was going to make puff pastry, I would just make puff pastry, and you can see me do that elsewhere on the channel. Rough puff I'd always stayed away from, but I made it because it was part of the recipe. Turned out really well. I've got a bunch of recipes coming up where I'm going to need rough puff, so I thought I'd do a breakout video of making it. And the recipe we're using is from pre-World War II English cookbooks. I had a look through my collection, and to a T, every recipe in English cookbooks pre-World War II for rough puff pastry is exactly the same. Exact same ratio of ingredients. It may be double the flour, but then it's also double the butter, right? So exact same ratio of ingredients. It worked. Let's stick with it. So in this bowl, I have flour. To that, I'm going to add butter. The butter is cold, not frozen, but cold. And I have cut it up roughly into cubes. Just, run a knife through it. So we'll put that butter into the flour, and we'll get in there with our hands. And you can see how, even though I've cut it up, it's still sort of stuck together. So we'll coat all of those little cubes of butter on all sides with the flour. And so let's talk about what's going on with this recipe. Rough puff pastry versus puff pastry. So puff pastry, I would make a dough out of flour and water, a little bit of salt, maybe a little bit of sugar. And we would roll that out, and then we would make a sheet of butter, put the sheet of butter into onto the pastry, fold over the pastry so that the butter is encased, and then roll that out, fold it, roll it out, roll it out, and fold it. And so that would essentially leave us with layers and layers and layers of butter in between the layers of pastry or flour. Great way to do it. It is kind of, you do reach a point where you're trying to keep the butter encased. You don't want it to pop out the sides. This is almost exactly the opposite. We've got cubes of butter that we're going to encase in the pastry or the dough. And as we roll it out, it's going to flatten into the dough. And so you're going to have streaks of butter in the dough. And that's what's going to give you the puff. If you were making pie dough, you would be, let's get into gluten. I guess we can't do this without talking about gluten. If you were making pie dough, you would be working this butter completely into the flour. You would be coating the flour with the butter, not coating the butter with the flour. You would be coating the flour with the butter, and butter is a shortening. And so the butter or any other fat that's solid at room temperature, it could be lard, it could be vegetable shortening. What it's doing is, as it coats the flour, it's stopping gluten structure from forming, or inhibiting gluten structure from forming. As soon as we add water to this flour, two proteins come together, they form gluten. If you add enough water, or you work it hard enough, that one gluten gloms onto another gluten, gloms on, and then you've got long chains of gluten. And that's what you want when you're making bread. You want that elasticity. You want those long chains of gluten to form. When you're making pastry, you don't want long chains of gluten to form. You want the crust to be flaky. And in ye olde times, that was called short crust. And that was achieved by coating the flour in the butter. The shortening, that's why it's called shortening. It shortened the crust because it inhibited those long chains of gluten. Here we're not really coating the flour all that much in the butter. So we are going to get gluten forming, which is where, oh wait, let's put in the salt. Got some salt. Which is where this ingredient comes in. Most of the recipes call for lemon juice. Really what they're asking for is an acid. And so I'm going to use vinegar. If you're Canadian and you've ever made the Tender Flake pie crust recipe from the side of the Tender Flake pie crust box, you know that you add vinegar. And so what vinegar does, it's an acid, lemon juice, it's an acid. That acid also inhibits the growth of long chains of gluten, making the crust flakier. It makes the crust short. So none of the recipes from an earlier time tell you how much water to use. They tell you to use enough. So I've put the vinegar in here, all the vinegar that I need. I've added some water to it, and we're going to start pouring that into our bowl here, a little bit at a time. Get in with a fork. All right, a little bit more water. Now that all of the vinegar that I need for this recipe is in here, I can start adding the other water. I just wanted to make sure that I got all the vinegar in, and I didn't want to just dump the vinegar in and then put the water on top. I wanted to make sure that it was distributed fairly evenly. And I'm using a fork at this point just because I don't want to melt the butter from the heat from my hands. Not a huge deal. Get in there with your hands. You're going to have to use your hands at various points anyway. So if you want to use your hands, go right ahead. And we're just going to add enough water so that none of the flour is dry at the side of the bowl, but not so much that it's wet and sloppy. And I can't tell you how much water that is. Usually takes me 5 or 6 tablespoons in the number of times that I've made this. Since that first video, I've made this like a dozen times now. So 5 or 6 tablespoons. The old cookbooks never told you how much water. You had to figure it out on your own. And here's the reason why. Baking, as much as everyone tells you it's a science, it is also an art. There is an art to knowing how this works. Don't be afraid of that. I still want you to go and try it. Don't be afraid of that. But every brand of flour is going to absorb water differently. Even the same brand of flour over time is going to absorb water differently because there will be changes in milling practices. There will be changes in the type of wheat that they're grinding into that flour. Flour where I live in Canada is going to be different than flour where you live in the UK or Australia or New Zealand. The flour that they used in this book, when they published this book in 1914, is going to be different than the flour that you could possibly find in the same geographic location today in 2026. It's always going to be different. And I know that in my own experience, when I change to a different brand of flour, I end up using a different amount of water. Okay, so out on the bench, it's ragged looking, and at this point you just want to pull it together. It's going to be, this is a judgment call. Did I add enough water? Have I got enough? I would say if you're doing this for the first time, maybe err on the side of a little bit too much water. You can come back from that. I tend to do this and err on the side of being too dry. And if on my first roll and fold, I see that there's too much dry flour inside, I'll just wet my palm of my hand and sort of tap it over the top and then continue on. I don't know if professionally you're supposed to do that, but it works for me. So before I do my first roll and fold, I'm going to wrap this up and stick it in the fridge for probably half an hour. The idea with that is you really allow the flour to hydrate. You allow the water, the hydration level, to sort of even across the entire ball of dough. And that's going to allow you to roll it out easier the first time. So, bench scraper, pretty simple. Plop it on. Any extra on top. Wrap this up, and I will see you in a half hour. Okay, a little bit of flour out on the bench, and I'm going to bring our pastry out, put it in the middle of the flour. Okay, what we're about to do, we're going to do 5 or 6 times. 5 or 6 rolls and then folds. Every time we roll it out and fold it, we're going to wrap it back up, put it back in the fridge, and let it rest for another 15 or 20 minutes. This first time you do it, you're going to think you failed. I always think, oh no, what have I done? It's not going to work out. And then by the time you get to the third roll and fold, it's like, wow, this is really nice looking pastry. So don't worry too much about that. It's going to be really raggedy here at the beginning. It's going to look like it's falling apart, just like it is. Right? I wonder if maybe it's too dry. I think that all the time. Maybe what I've got here is too dry. I don't know. Looks pretty good though. It's not doing too bad. And you can see how the butter is sort of streaking out into the pastry. Just roll it just a little bit more. Okay, I think this looks good for the first one. I've got a little bit of water here. If I thought this was too dry, I'd put a little bit of water on my hand and just sort of tamp it over. I think it's okay. Might be a little dry on the bottom side. We'll find out. I'm just going to use the bench scraper to turn it over. Yeah, it's a little drier on the bottom, but I think overall our hydration is just about right. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. Now, back into the plastic wrap. And then back into the fridge. 15-20 minutes, and I will see you back here for roll and fold number 2. Okay, back for round 2. I've got a pot of chicken bones on the go here, making soup stock. Bubbling away nicely, looking good, smelling great. Now we're back for roll, turn, and fold number 2. So last time, oh, it's still really crumbly. Last time we rolled it out this way and folded it this way. So we're going to turn it 90 degrees and we're going to roll it in the opposite direction and fold it in the opposite direction. So we're always sort of folding back inward. And like I said, we're going to do this 6 times. Here's the deal. I know this is the internet. I know this is YouTube. I know what I'm supposed to say is 1 million folds. There's a point of diminishing return. There really is a point of diminishing return. And you're really not going to get that much extra by folding it 1 million times. 6 really seems to be sort of a good compromise. Right, so that rolled out really easily, really sweet. Still a little raggedy. You can see that. Some of the butter's popped out, so we'll just throw that on top. Not a big deal. Again, bench scraper. And fold it in. Bench scraper. Fold it in. Bring our plastic wrap back in. Wrap it up, back into the fridge, another 15 minutes. Right, so as much as we have to do this 6 times, that was like 4 minutes. And I was talking to you, which slowed me down. And I just leave the flour out on the bench while I'm doing this, because I just keep coming back to it. Okay, roll number 3. And so put it out on the bench. It's coming together a little bit more from the last roll. Turn it 90 degrees to the way I rolled it last time. And here we go. Okay, once again, that rolled out really nicely. Stuck a little bit to my rolling pin, not too bad. If you are rolling this out and it keeps snapping back and you can't seem to roll it, just cover it over, leave it be, walk away for 5 or 10 minutes, and then come back. Just letting it rest will let it rest, and it will roll out nicer. And again, when I'm telling you to put it in the fridge for 15 or 20 minutes, you don't have to be on a timer. You could come back in an hour, and it'll be okay. Fit it into your schedule. Don't think of this as something that's going to take up your entire day to do, even though it will. It's just going to do it in short little bursts. So back into the fridge. What was that? Number 3? So 3 more times. Okay, here we go. Roll and fold number 4. Okay, I think we're up to number 5. I always lose track. I always lose track. So I'll roll and fold one more time. I will spare you having to watch me do that. That's it for rough puff pastry. I will cut in at the end of this video a couple of the shots of the things that I make with this. But for the most part, it's nothing to be afraid of. It's really not all that time consuming. You do have to set aside a bit of time during the day to make it happen. But as you saw, it's just a series of 4 and 5 minute stops to roll and fold the initial mix. It really doesn't take that much time. And it's not as technically challenging as some of those TV baking shows would have you believe. Okay, so rough puff pastry coming up in the future.
Hey,
There
friends.
will be 2 upcoming recipes. One is a dessert and one is savory.
That was good. Oh, I'm not supposed to say that, am I?
Well, we can say that was fantastic. The dessert was pretty good too. It's eaten at this point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's none of that left. This that was absolutely fantastic. But you can see we got a really good puff out of that puff pastry. And
Of course, when we were done there, I saw this and I'm like, can I just crack that open? What's going on, bud?
So open that up. That is just a test piece that I had. It's been out of the oven all day, so it is a little bit dried out at this point.
Did you hear the nice? Oh, look at that.
But
That looks nice.
got
All those
really good
layers.
layers and lots of
Got that
puff.
buttery flavor?
Yeah.
Oh, that's the part that's best. That buttery flavor.
So,
A little jam on that.
come on. Oh, yeah. Come on back. Over the next couple of weeks, you're going to see a sweet dessert made with this and a savory appetizer made with this. It's super easy. I made it. You can do it too. Thanks for stopping by. See you again soon.